as explained via TV. Chapter 16 Background Checks. Has this ever happened to you? Hello, I nailed the interview. Great. Bye. What's that? We'll talk again soon. All right. Bye. What's that? You're gonna do a background check? Okay. Bye. Oh, nobody told me this is gonna be a thing. I'm so stressed. How involved are these background checks? I've got to prepare. They could be anywhere. Do they have access to my personal informations? I gotta destroy everything. It all has to go. I'll sell the house, the car, swap identities, and move to the moon. Don't. There has to be a better way. And there is. Become better acquainted with background checks. Background checks are a process that a company uses to look into your history and ensure you aren't a crazy liability. They'll look into your history, possible criminal records, and typically social media activity to see if there are aspects of your background and behavior that might prevent them from wanting to hire you. The purpose is also to confirm your identity as stated and ensure that you are legally allowed to work within the country. Companies will potentially check previous employers, educational institutions, search government records, and more. Companies will often ask for your written consent before performing a pre-employment background check. In the United States, it is not legally required for them to get permission to do an internal background check, but most will. This is an important thing to touch on. You know, comedy aside, a lot of people are afraid of background checks and worried about what is gonna, be revealed, or, oh, I have adult work on my socials or other things like that. And honestly, you can kind of not worry about some of the things you'd think and then do worry about other things you might not. If you have adult work or whatever, they might flag that, but that doesn't really have to do with your job if it's on a social media and you're not submitting that. However, if they look at your social media and it's full of death threats to people, even jokingly, those will usually get flagged. Sometimes will be presented with context for people on the job to look into, et cetera, so on. But background checks tend to happen, and they will usually be pretty thorough at larger companies. I've never had a problem with them. So if you're familiar with my work or my behavior online, you can kind of understand that that's all okay behavior, But obviously, if somebody's being a terrible bigot or really just threatening things or seem like a security risk, this is where that stuff's going to show up. This is also where they will vet previous employers. A lot of times during background checks, that's when those references we mentioned in the earlier chapter might come up. And this is where they might find out if you forged documents or other things like that that are really fun that you shouldn't do because they're not actually fun. So keep that in mind. But they can do a background check. You will usually be asked for your consent or told that it's going to happen and can navigate it accordingly. If you deny that you want a background check performed at all, do understand that this is likely to prevent you from getting the job. Because even if you're like, I can legally bow out of this or that, which if you are uncomfortable, you should, they can find any grounds not to hire you. You know what I'm saying? And it won't be necessarily provable as to the reason why. If a third party is employed and or a credit check is performed, they do require permission. This is always true within the United States, at least. So keep in mind, you're going to hear about it, you're going to have your permission required, and you're going to need to sign off on it. You will also typically be notified they are going to perform a background check before they do. Usually for the aforementioned reason, but also it's just considered common courtesy and standard practice. This means no permission is legally required to check the following: education and employment history, previous employers for statements, available social media. If anything's available online publicly, it's fair game. You can't prevent them from seeing it. You can lock accounts. They cannot force you to show your social media to them. The severity of a background check will depend on the company. Checks typically happen near the end of the hiring process, but can happen even after an employee has sent an offer letter. The potential employee, you, does not pay for any costs incurred for this, the employer does. Information you provide in the application process and online communications are used in tandem with information uncovered during the check to verify your identity and eligibility for work. A background check does not necessarily mean that a place has decided to hire you, though it is a sign that you are being seriously considered. They may pay the fees, do the due process, and go with someone else anyways, and it might be nothing to do with the background check results. Third-party businesses may be employed to perform more in-depth investigations. Smaller studios are less likely to perform extensive background checks. If you provide it, then they will search your social media. This is why I said in the resume and also the portfolio section, not only do you not want to use social media as your portfolio, but you do not need to include your social media on your resume or your application or anything. You simply don't need to. They will ask for it, likely, but you don't need to put it. And even if you have one, you can just be like, oh, nah, I don't really have and use that. And if they find it, which if you have it, they likely will find it, it's not really a big deal. You just don't need to provide it for them. If you don't want them to see it, but you have it, make them work for it. If you do not provide your social media, the company will often search for and find it anyways. Hey, look, that's the thing we were talking about. Social media checks look for red flags in posted language and content. Sometimes they will search for keywords. Sometimes they will manually search through posts to get a general idea of your countenance. Are you a racist? Are you an asshole? Are you cool? Are you violent? Do you store guns in your face? If you post highly inappropriate things, even in jest, this may affect your potential employment. I'm going to kill you in Minecraft. Yeah, that's going to be a flag, buddy. Flagged items can be extremist political activism, verbal accusations, evidence of violence, threats, etc. And keep in mind, I will tell you, I am not an alt-right leaning individual, so if you are, probably ignore everything in this video, because we won't get along. But it doesn't mean you're right or wrong. It means you're extremist, okay? So if you're fighting for the right cause, like, hey, civil rights, but you're like, Molotovs for civil rights, let's bring down the... That can still be something that they'd flag you for and go, do we want someone this volatile working for our company? It's not whether you're justified or not, or you feel you are, it's whether it's going to be a red flag or not. So keep in mind that kind of thing. Not everything flagged and brought to a company's attention will adversely affect your standing. Context will matter. An actual person will determine whether you are making a silly joke about dying in Mario Brothers or making a very real threat against another person. So if you're like, oh man, oh man, we were getting murdered in Call of Duty and we gotta get them back. That's obviously going to be like you're just talking about a game versus like real world. Not safe for work art on your social should not poorly affect your standing. However, if you have not safe for work on your social, then do not provide a link to it yourself. This goes back to don't provide porn to your potential workplace. Game dev companies generally do not perform drug tests. I'm not going to say they don't. I'm just saying they generally don't. If your employer wants to check your references, this is when that information might be requested. Don't be nervous about background investigations unless you have something to hide. For the most part, companies are going to be what you could call reasonable in this case, and it's not going to be anything crazy. They're not going to try and formulate conspiracy theories about you based off this or that. They're generally just looking to see if you are who you say you are, if everything that you've provided informationally is vetted and true. Are you committing fraud or not? Are you a crazy person in secret or on your own time? Still, for privacy's sake, do not provide more than is asked for, and remember things like socials are never required. You can usually find more in-depth on background check procedures and how data is handled in the legal section of websites for larger companies like Blizzard, Riot, etc. That's true. You can just look on their website under legal and they'll talk about this kind of thing. So for bigger companies, you're more likely to find specifics on this, and I encourage you to peruse those on your own time. Now your background check worries are a thing of the past. Let's try this again. Oh, a new email from the place I interviewed just arrived. What's this? They need to do a background check. No problem. I'm well informed and know what to expect. Thanks, BG Check Pro. Wow! BG Check Pro, your solution to all background check worries. Call now and order. Q&A available at 1-800-555-5555. Q&A time, buddy. You got anything you want to ask? Now is the time. Can a company easily find who have followed in the past? For example, if you were a part of a bad community a long time ago, or as the age-old adage, once it's on the internet, it'll be there. It'll be there forever. If they can find it, and a lot of these companies, they're meant to find it. Like if you were on a forum for like, you know, bigotry or something, and that was like 8 years ago, they're probably still going to find it. And it'll probably be brought up, and some places will be like, yeah, that's not good. Don't do that. How can companies find your account if you use a pseudonym? Can they contact the social media to find your email trace? Most places won't go that hard. Sometimes they'll match up basically if you have, you know, your email linked to that. So you have a handle that you're using that's not your real name, but your email matches up or anything. Those are easy through lines that they'll follow. So reasonable expectation of connecting the dots is going to lead them to you. But if you completely decouple a lot of that, then you're going to be fine. So, you know, just expect that if it can be traced to your name, your addresses, which can be linked to your name, your email, your phone, all of that stuff, they're going to find accounts associated with it. That's their job. That's what they're doing. Is that it? 2 questions? We good? Can they view Discord DMs? Generally, no. That's going to get to the point where you're probably performing criminal activity and then certain documentation is requested, and that's not going to be through the company. So that's not going to happen. But that's a pretty suspicious question. I'm not going to touch that too hard. But yeah, you're basically talking about a legal investigation, which isn't what they're going to get to. At that point, they would have offloaded you as a consideration for the position, and they would have been talking to the authorities because they feel that you're actually a real threat to somebody. Which would be like if they found as, you know, a background thing where you're like, oh, I'm going to kill swaths of people, and then like, whoa, hey, maybe we should alert the authorities about this, and then like, we also won't hire them. Sorry, we found somebody better for the job, and now you're dealing with a completely different organization. All right, let's move on. That one took a while to do in Google Slides. I got to be honest. That one took it's short but sweet. I hope you liked that.